Hello, Internet. This is Justin Security. I am your host, Justin, and in this video we will be talking about what Nessus is, what it does, what you'll need before installing Nessus, and lastly, how to install Nessus. Alright, the first thing I want to talk about is what exactly Nessus is. Nessus is a network vulnerability scanner, It essentially scans your network and finds common vulnerabilities, and it will alert you of what they are, how to fix those vulnerabilities before they become a problem. Some of the scans can also simulate these attacks and find problems based on the attacks simulated. Well, Nessus is very minimalistic. It's very powerful. The scans it does can be ran on a network of really any size. The scans are highly customizable, can scale from a home network to an enterprise level environment, with hundreds of people, hundreds of employees. The example network I'll be using in these sets of videos will be fairly simple. I'm going to end up using my home network as a testing grounds with some other components added in. Now that we know what Nessus is and kind of what it does, we'll move on to what is needed in order to get Nessus going. The most important component is a computer on a network. You can have one computer on a network, you can have 10 computers on a network. Nessus limits it to roughly 30, I believe, so you should be fine in most cases. I don't expect many people to have 30 computers on a network, but that is a possibility. The next component is an internet connection. In order for Nessus to install the plugins that it provides, you'll need an internet connection. There is an offline installation method, but this video will not cover it. You can find it in Nessus's support portal. If you like, you can investigate it further, but it's beyond the scope of this video, so I won't provide that information. You'll also need an internet browser. I personally prefer using Firefox. While doing a Nessus scan, I ran into quite a few problems using Explorer. I don't want to have to troubleshoot it, so you can go ahead and use Firefox. You can go ahead and try to use Explorer. That's up to you, but I will not be using it in this video. Along with actually getting Nessus, you'll want an email account. To download Nessus, you have to have an email for the registration code that they send you. You shouldn't get any spam, so use your primary email if you want, create an email if you want, if you think they're going to give you junk mail. But I have signed up for close to 20 keys and have yet to get any kind of spam. Alright, before we actually install it, I'd like to talk about my environment that I've set up to run these tests. It is actually a mixed environment of virtual machines and real hardware. I initially wanted to have a completely virtual environment. As I set it up, I realized that it would not be a realistic interpretation of a live network with a router and the many devices a home network would have. So I decided to use my personal home network along with a couple of virtual machines. I have other devices on my network like phones and tablets. I won't be including those devices in my scan just because the scans can take a long time, and having to scan 15 devices versus having to scan 5 devices, it just works better, is much smoother. I'd like to talk a little bit about my physical setup. I essentially have a router, just a Belkin router I bought at Best Buy probably about 3 years ago. The settings here will almost always be different. Your router can, just by model number, changing a model number, it could drastically affect how the router runs. So a really important component to this would be to know your router and maybe do some research, know how to log into your router. I'll do some quick examples of how to log into your router, but nothing really elaborate. My personal computer that I'll be using, the one that I'm using right now, is a Windows 10 machine. And the last physical component to this network will be an Epson wireless printer that I just so happen to have. I threw it on my network just to see if it would give me any, vulnerabilities. Now on to the virtual setup that I'm using. I'll go over a little bit about what a virtual box is briefly, or virtual machine. A virtual machine is essentially a machine computer that will run virtually. There's no hardware. It's not a physical machine. It's actually being ran on my Windows 10 machine in the background. So Essentially, all you really need to know is that it's a virtual computer that is running on my computer. For my virtual setup, I plan to use, or I will be using, Windows XP Service Pack 3, the most updated version I could possibly find. I wanted to use it because I feel like it'll be interesting to see what vulnerabilities show up compared to Windows 7, and I think it'll serve as a good reminder or a warning to those who still have Windows XP and have not made the shift to another operating system. The second machine, as I mentioned, is a Windows 7 machine using Service Pack 1. I just really wanted to get a modern, clean system that I could load up with a bunch of junk, toolbars, normal things that people would, maybe accidentally install on their computers. I'd also like to note that before I've done all this, I've created a baseline scan of all of my peripherals that are on my network that I'm choosing to scan. So we'll be able to go ahead and compare the baseline versus, the bloatware that I've installed on the Windows 7 virtual machine. Hopefully it'll turn up some results. Now that we have the intro kind of worked out, we can move on to the actual installation of Nessus. Once again, I am using Firefox. You could probably use Chrome. Explorer, I once again have had issues with, so I would just prefer to use it. If you want to use Explorer, that's up to you. You can troubleshoot it if you'd like, but I will not be doing that in this video. How do we get Nessus? Pretty simple. We just go to Tenable.com. Tenable is a company that owns Nessus, created it. They sell other products, but Nessus is what we're going to analyze, obviously, today. Once you navigate to Tenable's website, you'll want to go to Products in the upper right-hand corner and select Nessus Download. Now we're not going to download this quite yet. We still have to get an activation code before we decide to download it. So we'll go ahead and select Get an Activation Code. You have a choice of 3 different versions of Nessus. We're going to be using Nessus Home. It's free, allows you to scan your home network up to 16 IP addresses, like you see here. And go ahead and register now. Should bring up a page to register for an activation code. Pretty simple here. I'm sure most people on the internet at this point have filled out a form or two. You just want to, go ahead and select the appropriate country, first name, last name, etc. Agree to the terms and conditions. Your activation code will come in your mail within a matter of seconds. So just wait for it to come through, and then we can move on to the next steps. Once you've registered, go ahead and navigate back up to the Products tab. Go ahead and select Download Nessus. This time we will actually download Nessus. Since we are going to be using Windows for this tutorial, you will want to choose the appropriate installation for your Windows installation. Make sure you know whether or not you have a 32-bit operating system, whether or not you're using Windows 7, 8, 10, or if you were using a 64-bit operating system like myself. I will be using 64-bit installation. Go ahead and look at the subscription agreement, make sure you read it all, and select OK. Once you agree to the terms and conditions, you will get a quick little pop-up asking you to save the file somewhere. I recommend just saving it on the desktop. That's where I've saved mine. I've already have a copy, so I'm going to replace it. It should go in your download little toolbar icon up there. Go ahead and select your icon. You should be able to install it directly from your browser. Go ahead and select the Nessus install. It should be the first one. It's going to ask you, hey, do you want to run this? Yeah, go ahead and run it. Once you run it, you want to go ahead and hit Next. It's pretty standard installation. Of course, you will have to agree to a license agreement. Obviously, make sure you read it, and then go ahead and hit next. This is it's telling you where you're gonna install it. I just go with the default path. There's no reason to change it. And then go ahead and hit next again. Go ahead and finish it. Go ahead and install the program. You will get a pop-up for another program installation, WinPCAP. Sounds a little weird, but it is necessary for Nessus to run. So let's go ahead and install it. WinPCAP is a driver that allows for low-level network access to capture packets on your network. In essence, it helps Nessus do its job during the network scans. It's used by a lot of open source software makers. It's kind of the industry standard for low-level network scans. So we'll go ahead and go through the installation, selecting next. Move on with the installation of WinPCAP. Go ahead and agree to the terms and conditions of the license agreement, and make sure you read it. And go ahead and install it now. Go ahead and select finish and let Nessus complete its installation. We're finished here, so we can go ahead and select finish, and it will pop up with a welcome. It is welcome to Nessus. Please connect via SSL by clicking here. SSL is Secure Socket Layer. It is the security standard for establishing an encrypted link between a web server and a web browser. It basically protects the data that is flowing to and from the web server and the browser. Here we will be connecting obviously via SSL. When we do click it, it will give us an error. So Firefox will. This error that pops up is your connection is not secure. The reason for this is the security certificate that we use. SSL uses certificates that are given from a certificate authority. This particular product does not have a security certificate for SSL. This is just Firefox's way of letting you know that. For the purposes of this tutorial, we will not be getting a certificate. It's not really within the scope of it, but you can, if you'd like to, you can make one yourself, or you can, purchase one or make one. But we will go ahead and add an exception to Firefox. This is very simple. Go ahead and permanently store this exception. Make sure to not uncheck that. Keep it checked. And pretty simple. We just want to go ahead and confirm the exception and move on with life. If the installation has gone through correctly, you should see a splash screen or a welcome to Nessus 6 screen. It's kind of a little intro to what Nessus does. Some of this matters, some of it doesn't. We talked about primarily what we will be using Nessus for, so don't really concern yourself about these particular specifics. Just know that it scans your network and we will be using it to do that. We'll want to go ahead and select continue to move on to account setup. Pick a username and a password. You want to make sure you keep this information. If you forget it or lose it, you're probably not going to be able to log into Nessus. This is stored locally. There's no way to, oh, I forgot my password. Let me try and get it back. So make sure you remember this. It's really important. Go ahead and hit continue. Firefox will ask you to remember it if you want to. I went ahead and remembered it. I am bad at remembering passwords. So now that we are at the product registration screen, we will need to register the proper product. Since we're using home, I think we should just stick with home. Anything else will probably not be compatible with this particular tutorial. You can choose offline, but I will not provide the instructions on how to install an offline installation. Alright, so now we will need to fetch the activation code, which I already have copied and pasted. I've already gotten it. It should be in your email at this point, so grab that, input it, and go ahead and continue with the plugin installation. It may take a little bit of time for it to think. It'll let you know the setup's complete, and here we are downloading Nessus. This takes quite a while, depending on how fast your system is, so I'm going to go ahead and speed it up here. Once again, your mileage is going to vary on this particular situation. It'll first download and then initialize, so maybe go ahead and push pause while you're waiting here, or while you're waiting for yours to install. Alright, congratulations, you have officially installed Nessus Home on your personal computer. We've remembered it, so my login's already there. And this is probably a good point to stop. We will continue the video series. The next one will be how to set up and use Nessus, how to start scans on Nessus. Hopefully it was a good video for you. Thanks, and have a good day.